Okay, so in this guide, we're looking at how you can lose 10 kilos in the next 12 weeks without any major food restrictions. So what I mean by that is saying, oh, I'm going to cut out sugar, carbs, whatever. We don't need to cut out dining out either. So this is all built around the flexible fat loss framework that I use with my clients. So it's built for high performers. So what I basically define a high performer as is somebody who, they're obsessed with how they show up in their chosen field, in their craft. That might mean somebody who's an entrepreneur, C-level executive, or even someone who's a creative. I work with a lot of actors. So this is where you shape your lifestyle around optimal performance in your craft. And in many senses, what you bring to the world shapes part of your personality, and everything kind of comes downstream from that. So if you're going to achieve your fitness goals, then it all needs to be built from the bottom up around your craft and around your lifestyle that goes with it. So there's many variables that can get in the way of achieving a fat loss goal. So we've got things like not enough time, maybe you travel a lot with work, maybe you have networking events, maybe there's alcohol at these different networking events, there's work dinners where there's all this highly palatable food that's being brought in, and all these lovely options, dessert, all this kind of stuff. This was basically how my life looked when I was surrounded in my previous career by many high performers who, they'd be on these conference circuits, so traveling to all these different events in the tech industry, and then just gorging on all sorts of food. That is great to have in moderation, but if you're doing it 3, 4, 5 nights back to back, that can cause a lot of problems for your long-term health outcomes. Okay, and then the other thing is fears of developing health conditions. So many ex-colleagues of mine that I witnessed had already by a pretty young age developed things like type 2 diabetes, various issues to do with heart disease, cholesterol, blood pressure, and this was all downstream from their lifestyle that wasn't being managed, even though they were highly successful from a work and career standpoint. So the outcome we're looking to achieve in the next 12 weeks is, for men, let's say to lose 10 kilos in the next 90 days or 12 weeks, however you want to slice that. Women lose 7 kilos in the next 12 weeks to 90 days. But we want to do it in a way where, we have less stress, more energy and maximum efficiency. Because if you can prove to yourself that you can actually achieve that goal with as minimal of input as we can get away with, that gives you a lot of confidence to sustain this as a lifestyle, as opposed to, you hop on a 12-week transformation that involves you going to the gym 5 days a week, hour-and-a-half sessions, eating nothing but chicken, rice and broccoli, and then, that coach is saying that, I work with busy professionals, whereas really you're just paying more money for the privilege of being given the exact same plan that would be given to anyone else. This is very much a different style built on a framework that has guiding principles, so the flexible fat loss framework, which I'll show you next, and that can be layered on top of not only your existing lifestyle but also an aspirational lifestyle that you actually want to have. So the framework itself has 5 key pillars. We've got budgeting, right? So we just want to lay out some broad goals. And when I say budgeting, I mean calories, I mean time and energy. So funnily enough, the actual energy that we expend in terms of, when we talk about, someone has drained my energy and mental bandwidth and all this kind of stuff, that's a form of energy, and so is a calorie, right? So like a calorie is actually a placeholder term to basically quantify energy that we either consume or energy that we expend. So for example, if you were to talk about your net worth, right, you might think about it that you have stocks, bonds, real estate, crypto, whatever, right? Now, when people talk about, this investment's good, this investment's bad, it's kind of missing the point, because if your overall portfolio is either increasing or decreasing, that's actually what you're concerned about. And that's kind of like what a calorie is. So like imagine if we can measure your net worth in terms of the US dollar, right? So we attach that value to it because it's the world reserve currency. Think of calories as like the world reserve currency for how we think about fuel in versus fuel out. And there's all different sources. We want to diversify, right? So we want a mix of all of them because they all provide a different function in the body. You've got fast energy, slow energy, kind of like your fast money and your slow money. And then we also have, building blocks like protein, etc. Okay? So we want to track this in some way, but we want to track it in a way that's very easy to do. We don't want to add extra layers of homework when we're tracking. And the only two variables we're really concerned about are total calories, right? Because that keeps us focused on the bigger picture. Because any diet that you may have ever been on in your life where you lost weight, it was because you were in a calorie deficit. You were eating less calories than you were expending. It doesn't matter whether that was done via a vegan diet, a carnivore diet, a keto diet, intermittent fasting. Once you are in a calorie deficit, these are all implementation methods of getting you there. And that's what drives fat loss. I've had many clients come to me who were previously following such restrictive dietary protocols. They switched over to actually just tracking and they were shocked that their weight loss continued and that they never regained weight once we got them to higher calories and stuff like that as well. Okay, so we need to have some form of tracking. And like you would with financial management, right? So I build a lot of this off financial management principles. You set a budget, you track it, but you're not watching every penny, right? Like you're not tracking every penny on an Excel sheet that goes in and out. Some people do, but that's completely obsessive and the complete opposite of what I would think of as a good lifestyle. In the same way, we want a way of tracking that's very easy to do, okay? We don't want to turn eating food into an accounting exercise. And then we've got our fast money and our slow money. So what I mean here is when you think about investing, right? There's this concept of fast money investments, maybe like trading stocks or currency exchange rates, things like that. And then you've got slow money where it's like, you invest in maybe like a plot of land that you might sell for a profit in 10 years time, okay? Think of weight training as our slow money because we are building muscle mass. And the more muscle mass you carry, the more insulin sensitive you're going to be, the more calories you're going to burn at rest. So you're actually increasing the likelihood that you're going to maintain your fat loss results and you're decreasing the likelihood of developing metabolic conditions and also, issues to do with quality of life like your posture, pain, etc. That is all benefited by having more lean muscle mass. And then the fast money, think of like steps, cardio, anything that's like burning calories on a daily basis, okay? You can't really out cardio your current state of affairs because we typically only burn about 5 to 10% of our total daily calories via cardio. It's a very small part of the equation. It's not very high leverage, whereas diet actually is. That's where we have the highest point of leverage when it comes to fat loss. But it's still important to have some level of cardio. We want to think about it as ticking off the bare minimum, but we don't want to rely on it because studies have demonstrated time and time again that we tend to eat back any of the calories that we burn through excess cardio. That's why, for example, you won't see a marathon runner emaciated to death, even though they're theoretically burning, enough calories to actually bring them down to dangerous levels of body fat percentage, but they tend to eat it back. Or their metabolism just tends to adjust to all that output to the point where it's kind of negated, okay? And then number 5 is lifestyle. So that's actually probably the most important point. We could probably actually bring this up to the top of the framework where we actually start bottom up with your vices, your guilty pleasures, because if we don't work those in, you're going to break your diet at some point. You're going to gain the weight back. Interventions where you cut out and restrict things can be great in the short term. They make horrible lifestyles. And obviously now if it's things like you want to quit alcohol or you want to quit smoking, by all means. I've actually done both of those, but it was a long journey, right? It wasn't something that I just flicked a switch, 12-week journey, complete transformation. That can be good for, like, say, even in religious practices. There'll be things like Ramadan in Islam, there'll be Lent in Christianity, you know, these periods of short-term deprivation to reboot the reward system. But in the long term, it actually undermines your reward system because it's a feedback loop. It requires input, it requires stimulus to be healthy as well. It's not just about deprivation, okay? So this framework is layered on top of everything else. And then once we have these abstract concepts right in our head, it actually makes for such flexible implementation because we can slice this thousands, tens of thousands of different ways, okay, depending on your particular lifestyle. So one of the ways we can do this to just simplify a narrow path forward, right, is we'll do time-efficient training. So we're going to do 3 45-minute workouts per week. Resistance training, we're going to do 10 sets per major muscle group per week. That will be enough to build lean muscle mass or at the very least maintain what you already have. We'll use supersets, so doing 2 sets back to back and then resting. We'll do drop sets where when you reach failure at the end of your set, that you lower the weight maybe by 50% and then you bust out another amount of reps that you just did. So if you did 6 reps, you're going to do another 6 at 50% and then you might lower it again, right? Just a time efficient way of getting in extra volume. And we're also going to use very high rep ranges. So we're going to, you know, on a few exercises we might do very low rep ranges with heavy weights, but for the most part of our training sessions, it's going to be like 8 to 15 reps, 12 to 20 reps, just to get in additional volume, additional tension on the muscle in the least amount of time possible. We're also going to avoid redundancy. So for example, we're not going to do 5 different chest exercises on one day because there is just no point. As long as you've hit the clavicular head, you've done some form of shoulder adduction, so bringing your arms into the midline, some form of pressing, some form of incline, you've pretty much nailed it when it comes to your chest training, as long as you've done 10 total sets across your chest in a week, for example, okay? Less is more in this kind of approach, okay? We're also going to make use of home and street workouts to give us many more options, okay? Especially if we need contingency plans. So if we're traveling, if we're in an environment where we don't have access to a gym, or it's just going to be inconvenient for us to get to a gym, we want to make contingency plans so that we can at least keep going with the bare minimum and stay in momentum the entire time, no matter what life throws at us, okay? Nutrition. Let's make this as simple as possible. I've switched all my clients over to using ChatGPT or any kind of GPT that they want. I give them all the different recipes that I use to make meal plans. I still give them a meal plan, but once I upload it there to ChatGPT, then we're prompting the AI's memory. We're basically putting those resources in its memory, and then it's a two-way street with saying, okay, I just had this for breakfast. It's then knocking that off your total, and then it's giving you suggestions based on all those recipes about how you could fill remaining calories, for example, right? And you only want to track calories and protein, at least for this 12-week period. In the long term, yeah, you want to be focused on like fiber intake, micronutrients, maybe potassium for like hydration, and you know, it's just a nutrient that most people tend to overlook. So, you know, getting in plenty of bananas, potatoes, avocados, etc. But for the at least just for the fat loss period, we want to narrow the focus as much as possible. So we just want to focus on total caloric and total protein intake. Calories being the main thing, protein intake being a secondary nice to have. Okay, so the prompt we'll put into any GPT of choice is, please use the industry standard total daily energy expenditure calculator, so TDEE, to calculate my caloric intake to lose 10 kilos of body weight in the next 12 weeks. Let's keep my protein intake at 1 gram per pound of total body weight per day. Okay, this is going to serve two masters in that you will have nice sustainable fat loss that you can actually stick to, and then also you are going to retain the muscle mass that will, provide the basis for, as I said, this kind of like slow money style of investing, where you need a certain amount of lean muscle mass to continue burning fat, in perpetuity. Okay, so prompt number 2. I will use this chat to track my daily caloric intake and protein intake. I'll also ask you to provide meal options to help fill my remaining nutritional targets based on what I've already tracked throughout the day and options available to me. Okay, so like for example, if you're on the road and you're in, Chicago, right? Let's just say, you're staying in a hotel, you can get room service, right? So maybe your work covers you getting room service breakfast or whatever's on the buffet. You go down to that buffet, you take pictures of what you're eating, tot up the calories and the protein for your breakfast. Then you might say to ChatGPT, I'm going to be going for dinner later with my colleagues. Keep 1,000 calories aside for that later because I want to have a glass of wine. Please provide me a lunch option in the area of, downtown Chicago, where I can hit my total numbers. It's going to be time efficient, it's going to be convenient, etc. And then allow it to basically scan all these different places like TripAdvisor, Reddit, all these different sites that kind of like aggregate all of those tips on where to get like a convenient lunch and then where the nutritional information is. It's absolutely amazing. It just takes all of the time and decision-making fatigue out of you doing this yourself. And then the GPT workflow, it's going to be 5 minutes or less per day. We're going to be doing voice notes. We're going to be taking pictures of food with without nutritional info. I've done this a few times and like the margin for error is not that much. So just track it, don't overthink it, move on. Adherence and consistency is going to be much better than aiming for perfection, right? We want to take pictures of menus, so we want this two-way system where it's actually suggesting to us what we can eat, and it'll typically give you 3 or 4 options on the menu, so it's not that restrictive. And then you can also use it to research menus ahead of time. You can say to it, right, I'm going out to this place tonight with a work colleague. What can I have within 1,000 calories, and keeping aside maybe 200 for some wine, for a glass of wine, large glass of wine in that case. And then when you rock up to the meal, you're not looking all stressed, flustered in your head when you're at the menu. You've kind of prepared a little bit so that you can relax into that environment and come across, really charismatic, charming, whatever it is that you want to do. If it's like you're taking out a client or you're angling for a promotion, this is all very important stuff to think about, because we want to like over prepare on the front end and then look very relaxed and in control and like it's effortless when we're in those kind of networking situations. So with the workouts then, okay, let's imagine you have the perfect gym setup. What you're going to do is you're going to do 2 compound lifts. You're going to rest 2 minutes in between sets, and you're only going to aim for 2 hard sets, okay? Our goal here is to build and maintain strength. Strength training does not actually require as much volume as to maintain muscle mass. It's less of a concern. It's still a really effective way to increase your strength. If you were like a power lifter, they'll do a ton of volume, ton of rest, ton of sets. But we're not concerned about that. We just want to make sure we're maintaining some level of strength on the main movements. And then we want to get in plenty of low intensity, maximum stimulation volume on the rest of our exercises. By the way, there's an error here. So that superset you see here, 3A and 3B, those should both be 2 by 12 to 20, the same as the rest of them. And resting 90 seconds, so there's another little error here on superset 3. rest 90 seconds after you've done both supersets, okay? Same issue here, okay? So same error, but this is a pull workout, okay? So we want to do 2 major compound lifts here at the beginning, 2 sets of 4 to 8, so picking a weight that we can only do between 4 and 8 reps at, rest 2 minutes between sets, and then move into supersets where we're doing 2 sets of between 12 and 20 reps. My apologies on these errors. I very much am passionate about what I do and I love to publish a lot of content, but I am god awful when it comes to proofreading things, so I may need to rely more on AI for that. Then we'll have a home workout as a contingency. So the home workout is going to be a push focus session where we're going to do our pecs, glutes, quads, and then basically we're going to treat it, and triceps, and we're going to treat it as a circuit, right? To just keep it quick, keep it that we're not getting bored. And we'll basically just do these exercises back to back, resting 90 seconds then between each round, okay? And we'll perform that 2 to 3 times depending on how much time we have available, which will total up to about between 20 and 30 minutes depending on how many rounds of this you do. We also want to have a street workout just to keep things interesting. A lot of my clients have switched over to that now in the summer because we want to keep this flexible. What if we're at, Barcelona, where they have that amazing street workout gym down in Barceloneta Beach? Absolutely great place to work out. So we'll do our pull session there because at home workouts, it's very difficult to hit any of those pull focused muscles like the hamstrings, the biceps, the back, shoulders, unless we have like bands. And even then, it's very difficult to make the workouts intense enough using those bands. So what I like to do is get my clients to, do their banded stuff down at the home workout session. So like they'll bring 2 light bands with them to do stuff like lateral raises or, pull throughs, which are kind of like an RDL substitute. But then we'll be using the bars for the rest of the pull muscles. And then we don't need any equipment for the home workouts. They'll all be body weight focused because those are the push oriented muscles like the pecs, triceps, quads, glutes. And we can do all body weight exercises there on the push session so that then we can do the street workouts for the pull session. And these are the contingency workouts. If you have a perfect routine for the next 12 weeks where you can go to the gym every single time and there's no break in between, you don't need the home workouts, you don't need the pull sessions. This is all about contingency plans for the busy days, the busy weeks, or trips away. Cardio, we just want to do the bare minimum to get that activity level that we desire. So we're going to do 8 to 10,000 steps per day, or we'll do 200 calories in total of cardio at the end of a session, okay? Keeping it nice and simple there. And when I say 200 calories of cardio, it doesn't matter that you're using a treadmill or an elliptical, which is going to be wildly inaccurate in terms of how many calories you're actually burning, right? That any tool, if it's a smartwatch, a Garmin, I don't care what they tell you in the spec sheet, they are terrible at estimating this stuff. Just use it as a relative measure, okay? Did I burn the 200 calories in less time or more time today? Use that as a gauge. Because what I do is I'll do a workout and then I'll say to myself, right, I'll do 200 calories today and I'll try and do it in as quick a time as possible. Or then on another day where I want to listen to something, maybe like a podcast or something like that, I'll just set the treadmill to an incline, walk on it, and I'm in no rush to burn those 200 calories. The numbers here are not so much important as it's just more the principle around having that base layer of cardiovascular output that's enough to keep the whole engine ticking over to get the health outcomes, but without having the negative consequences of being under-recovered, overly fatigued, and eating back the calories that you would have otherwise burned. Now, these case studies are just people that I wanted to put here who actually have lost those 10 kilos in Not in 90 days, actually, in 12 weeks, which is 84 days. But again, another typo. I shoot from the hip when it comes to creating things. So using the flexible fat loss framework, okay? These are guys who are very busy. We've got over here, Seva is a B2B business development guy in the blockchain industry. We have Lubomir here in the middle. He's a director. He's actually directing a movie right now about the debut of Michael Schumacher in the Formula One. I was actually in that movie, had a very small part to play, and got the lead role, Živko here on the right, into shape for the movie using this framework. It was implemented in entirely different ways for all three individuals here, but it's because we're using an overarching framework that we're able to do that, even though they have vastly different schedules, preferences, even the amount of calories that they will lose weight at are wildly different, okay? They have different genetic profiles, different starting body weights, different heights even, so that all has to be taken into consideration and can be by a bottom-up framework rather than a top-down, overly prescriptive, traditional fat loss plan. So if you have any questions about how to implement this, or you'd even like to just grab a quick call with me, no problem. Instagram, I'm at Mixer Linehan. Email, you can find me at michael@michael-linehan.com. And then on WhatsApp, Viber, Telegram, any of these chat apps, you can just hit me up at +359 876 32 3123. I would highly suggest adding me to your contacts because that is a Bulgarian number, and unfortunately we kind of get flagged by all these different systems as potentially being scammers. We have gotten Schengen access this past year within the EU, so I think that is starting to change, and we will be adopting the euro this year. So, this is turning around, but just be aware that I may get lost in your spam if I'm not added as some kind of safe sender or whatever you need to do there. And that's it. So hope you found this helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. And honestly, go back to these case studies, go into my Instagram, have a look at like the people who are actually getting results, and really believe in this stuff, because to implement anything, you need conviction in your beliefs that this will work. I would suggest putting on a whiteboard somewhere, or like on a post-it or somewhere you regularly see it, write down the goal of, I will lose 10 kilos in the next 12 weeks without cutting out any of the food or drink that I enjoy, okay? It is very doable. I've done it with myself, having been obese as a kid and being a binge eater, and then going on to just being really busy in my career, having multiple businesses, traveling to different countries. I've seen it in my clients who are really busy people. You do not need a strict prescriptive lifestyle where you're cutting out entire food groups or following too many rules on a daily basis. You need a framework. You need something that's flexible. You need something that's bottom up. You need daily momentum, right? Not a mile-long to-do list, just doing the bare minimum you need to keep doing to keep moving forward, because your main goal in life is your work, your craft, your business, whatever that is, and any kind of implementation you do when it comes to fat loss needs to support that. Fitness should always add to your life. It should never detract from it. Okay? Thank you very much for your time, and stick around on my socials for more content in this vein. Thanks very much. Talk soon.